Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Simplifying Network Automation with NetGuru. I'm your host, and today we have some special guests. Like never before, we've managed to fit 3 guests. So super excited about this conversation. We've talked about it for a while now. Glad we made it happen. So modern, what's the book called, you guys? Modern Networking Observability.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to talk about that. It's going to be an observability episode. But before we jump into the demo and the book itself, I want to just let the guys introduce themselves. So, Christian, why don't we start with you? Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do these days. I know you just came back from PTO, so hope that went well.
Yeah, it was a short PTO, but it was a good one to just prepare for summer. Here in Spain is kind of hard to survive. So my background is all around network automation. I mean, I have been working on this kind of projects, automating networks at different verticals, industries, scales for more than 10 years, coming from a, I'm going to say, very traditional network architecture background. And my perspective, since I joined Network to Code almost 5 years ago, was more on understanding the holistic view about network automation. So many people jumps into network automation and it gets into some scripting, into some tools, some basic stuff that it's good to get started. But I want to actually approach the problem as a complete thing, that you start from the intention, your data, what you want the network to be, and you drive everything from that. And where is observability in this picture? So we are going to talk later about what we see after the role of observability playing in the network automation stack, but it's part of this scenario. So from the intent, you change the network, and then when you change something, you need the tools, the information, the insights in order to understand if what you have changed, or maybe not changed, but the network, because you don't own the whole network, the network as a whole has converged in a different way, and you have to adapt. And observability, and this is an important question, is a pillar in that architecture because it's what enables the closed loop automation and trying to fix things programmatically. So observability is one of my, I'm going to say, skills, not the only one, because I want to approach it more like as I said, holistically. But yeah, I think that this is a very important skill for any network automation engineer.
No, fantastic to have you. And that's a great point because we see a lot of people, right, coming and asking, how do I get started with automation? And they're expecting a simple answer. It's like, I do this one thing, but it's much more than that, right? It's making a plan, having a plan in place, the tooling, the metrics, right? It's much more to just like one simple thing that everybody's looking for, that, one thing that is like, tell me what to do right now to be a network engineer or network automation engineer. It's much more than that. So glad to have that conversation about observability specifically today. Okay, jumping on Josh. Tell us a bit about yourself, Josh, and welcome on the live stream.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us here. First off, about me, I'm at Network to Code. So I'm part of our professional services organization, help to lead the team down the path. I've got my journey on network automation started probably just over a decade ago. It was starting to take a look. I had been a traditional network engineer. I was exposed to a little bit of Python thanks to advanced services from Cisco coming in and saying, hey, this is how we do things with Python. And I remember distinctly saying, I can actually read that code. I can understand what that means. And so that was my first introduction to Python. I had a CS minor before, and I just ignored it for the first 10 or 15 years of my network career. And once I saw that, I just dove in of what could I do? How can I use this? Because, hey, yeah, I can do things a little bit more on scale. I'd done very well at doing things in a cookie cutter fashion, but how do we keep on moving things forward? And so from that journey, it was to make a decision. I was about to have my first child introduced to my family. It was, do I continue down a CCIE study or do I get into network automation? And I chose automation down that path. And so it's been a pretty awesome journey, really helping to show what automation can do, what really look at just not taking and doing things the same way always that we've always done it, but how can we do things differently? And so that's been a real excitement for me getting into network automation. So, and we can dive a lot deeper, a little bit otherwise, but now let's, observability, as Christian said, he explains it well. So have the same feeling about what observability means with automation. So.
Fantastic. All right. And then David.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So my background, I would say, comes from the NOC. Actually, I started my career as a network operation engineer. So in a network operation center. So I started doing shifts. I'm Venezuelan Irish. I started my work in the service provider network back in Venezuela. So I did a lot of shift work, okay, and around operations over the weekends, over the nights, and I think that part still got in me. That way around getting into observability, basically operations, right? They do, okay, they do how we maintain this that we just built. Has been always like in the back of my mind. I work with hyperscalers. I work with NTC with these guys. Okay, that's actually how we get to know each other a lot. So, and basically a lot of I actually joined NTC as a network observability engineer there at that time because I used to work on I used to work in AWS after for some years in the server provider world, and when I came back to I would say the financial world, I used to work in Bloomberg. I tried to see what kind of tooling was out there in order to what is new around monitoring observability. We must have something that is a little bit more reactive and with better graphics that can give us better insights. And I noticed that we've been kind of in the same place as 10 years ago. So that's when I actually started working a lot with observability. So a lot of the work has been around, okay, what can we do in order to get this better? And everything started actually with a simple automation change on some BGP peering routers in order to do some basic traffic shifting. It's not a matter of okay, I'm going to do a configuration change. I actually need to know what actually my data is coming from, the prefix that I'm receiving. Do I have reachability to that specific destination, multiple hops away? So there were a lot of different data, operational data that I needed to have into the mix in order for my automation to actually be successful. So that's actually where everything started. I would say that in NTC, definitely there was a lot of focus around observability, and how to bring the story that Christian and Josh have been saying about how can we bring these two realms together, And it's all about that reconciliation, right? That feedback loop, How can we, whenever we deploy, and actually, I think that's one of the few things why I think the book was kind of a really important things for us to get out. I mean, in my own selfish opinion, I would say that automation has been actually, I think one of the comments in the section reflect exactly what I have, what I've been feeling, which is the automation has been synonymous to source of truth or configuration changes for the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So it has been around that aspect, and operations has taken kind of the back seat. So I was kind of hoping with this book to actually bring in more to life, and to also take that front seat, and also be able to not only see it as at the aspect of the operational data, but what can you do with that data? So yeah, that's where we are right now. So
all right, fantastic. So we keep mentioning the book. Let's jump into the book then. How did it come to be? I mean, you guys, all three of you are working network to code, right? You're working all around observability related topics. You're all in the team or adjacent teams, and it's like, okay, let's write a book. Who started the idea? What happened?
So the fault is Christian, and I'm gonna say fault because Christian was the one pushing, hey, why don't we write a book? And I say, Yeah, that sounds like a fun idea.
Yeah,
I
but
didn't know what I was getting myself into.
just tell the truth. I was not just, let's say, coming to this conclusion without any foundation. I mean, as you said, David, Joyce, and myself, we have been working on many observability projects within Network to Code in order to realize all this picture of how the network can be automated and then, let's say, remediated as needed when something changes on the network. So we had the experience, and in most of this experience was based on, I'm going to say something that we talk later, this maybe idealistic approach that you don't need only one tool to do all your network monitoring stack as we were used to, this kind of monolithic things. We were used to work in a very scale out environments where there are the different functionalities that we can talk later about. But this experience about how you customize this, let's say, configuration to what data to collect, where to persist the data, how you can actually query data, visualize, create the alerts, all this experience, we already had the hands-on experience. And then I remember clearly it was 2023 in a Cisco Live event in Amsterdam. After the event, David was doing these observability demos all day. I said, we have all the content. Why we don't just share this knowledge with the rest of the community? And it happened that I had some experience writing books like Joyce. So we said, okay, let's get the top expert that David is and bring all his knowledge into some book where it's not only a theoretical book, it's a book, as we are going to see in a few minutes, that you can build completely your own lab with open source tooling, with container images of the tools and all the things working together for you to start building step by step all the different blocks that belong to this. And you see that the result after 1 year, like a child, it was completed, and we are here now presenting this book.
That's a great story. So it wasn't your first book, right, Christian Angel? You said you wrote something before, or
yeah. I already wrote. I contributed to the network automation book with Nautobot, and before that, my first experience was working on the second edition of the network probability and automation book from O'Reilly. That is one of the most popular books wrote by Jason Edelman, Matt Oswald, and Scott Lowe. In 2017, 2018, we had the second edition 2 years ago. And it was my experience first, because it's also something challenging when you don't have the experience to how to get a publisher, how to organize the book, how to get it done. And I always recommend do it at least in pairs, because it's the way to not get blocked, get other perspective on your content, because if not, you can get too much opinionated on things.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially if you have a full-time job, right? Because you have your job, and then this usually is after hours, weekends. So, I mean, you guys, fantastic work. I know it takes a lot of commitment and work to get a book of that magnitude out. All right. So, what about you, David? Did you like writing the book? Was it the first one for you?
Yeah, first one for sure. Yeah, honestly, I really enjoyed it. I cannot say, even though it was a little bit stressful because deadlines, ETAs, we need to bring this in order for do the reviews and so on. Definitely puts a stress, like any kind of normal project that you have to do. But besides that, I would say the aspect of like reading, cleaning it up, rereading it, understanding like actually this is redundant, actually let's like make this part more simple, or it definitely help, in my point of view, look at this challenge in a, I don't know, I would say maybe with some fresh eyes, like observability with a brand new look. And I would say the reward that I have seen from the book is, well, I think the community has been really welcoming, and I think it's something that it was kind of needed at the time, because right now a lot of the books around observability are really around either a really specific kind of tooling with some examples, or really practical or some examples, but they don't tackle the network aspect of things. So yeah, I would say it has been really satisfying. And Christian is really strict on timelines and reviews and so on. and I really love that about him because he managed to get the quality of the book in a better state. So thank you, Christian, for that.
Fantastic. All right, a quick shout out I wanted to give here to Dexter. Dexter, thanks for joining us, and also Yanis from Athens, from Greece. I don't know if you guys have seen Yanis at AutoCon 3. He was there. But yeah, they're usually on this stream, so I appreciate you guys joining. All right, so then moving on, right? We've talked about the book, about your guys' background. What do you guys want to show? Because I mean, we've talked about demos. We're big on demos and going deep into code. Show me how it works. So what do you guys want to show specifically today? By the way, we're gonna have a second episode, folks, because we decided that it's not enough time to fit everything that we wanted to show in 1 hour. So we'll have a second episode following this. We'll decide on what date, but there's coming more. Want to make sure that you get a more complete view of what the book is about and observability. So David, I know you have a demo set up. What do you want to talk about today? What do you want to show folks today?
Sure. So let me actually bring a little bit of, I'm going to mess it up over here really quick. So I'm going to start actually with let me share my screen. Yeah, here. Can everybody see my screen?
We can now, yes.
Okay, so I want to start with this repository. Okay, this is kind of like where all the labs, everything that is on the book, as Christian has mentioned, all the labs, everything is stored here. Okay, the book is a practical book, as Christian mentioned. It's actually divided in 3 parts. So the very first part is kind of like an introduction, talks about a little bit about observability, has some examples around collection of data and so on. The second part, there's also labs, right? But it starts to building a stack in a progressive manner, right? And I'm going to be talking a little bit about what the stack is and so on. But what I want to show today is basically there's inside the chapters of the book, there's one called batteries included, which is not really inside the book. This is kind of like everything already built in. Okay, it comes with configuration already populated, visualizations, alerts, data inside and out of bots around the network devices and so on. So there's definitely a lot of the setup is already complete. So we're going to be diving into this a little bit. And my goal is to give you a quick view of what it looks like, and then try to perform one of there's a lab here as well that explains how to do it, right? Before I actually jump into this and talk a little bit about one theoretical concept that I think is important before we jump into demo mode, I actually want to call out as well how you can actually spin this up. So in this repository, you will also find some setup guide, okay? This setup guide talks about the environment of how to actually work with the labs inside the book. Basically, there's some scripts and automation inside this repository that will help you deploy a DigitalOcean droplet, where you can actually install a container lab. It's going to be running some network devices over there, and it's going to create a small topology of basically 2 devices. And with Docker, we're going to have the entire observability stack. Okay, so this guide tells you step by step what to do, what you need to do, kind of where if you need images, how to download the images, where to put in which folder. There's some prerequisites in order for you to actually spin this up. But after you have these prerequisites, it should be able to just deploy it for you and be able to have a lab ready to go. Okay, I just spun up mine, I think like an hour and a half ago. So yeah. Okay, now before diving into this, right, into observability per se, into the various included, I want to talk a little bit about kind of like the reference model. So This is actually a presentation that I did in Greece, which great. By the way, I love it. I love it there. Amazing experience there.
I know. Shout out Ioannis. I've been like 3 times in Greece. I always want to go back. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I can understand why for sure. So well, it was great, great people as well. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I know. Okay, well, coming back to the architecture, so there's a couple of things that I think the book focuses a lot, which is the observability architecture, or framework, data pipeline. Yeah, people have different names, but the whole idea is try to create kind of like a modularized view of the different components of what you will normally use in an observability application, right? There's a data collection layer, which is
Mhm.
focused on services that are getting data from, in this case, the network, and be able to process it over to a distribution layer, which maybe does some data manipulation. You have data that is coming from one vendor and you have data from another vendor, and you need to normalize it in some way. Maybe it's
Mhm.
interface admin in one and interface enable in the other. So you need to normalize it to a command name. So
Mhm.
stuff like that, especially if you're using different kind of data sources. Maybe you're using SNMP in one side, you're using GNMI in another one. So you need a way for you to process that data, normalize it. And that's basically on this thing with a pipeline. Then you have a database as a storage layer where you store this data. You store this in a time series database or a log storage. And usually these are different dedicated databases. But one thing that they're really they have in common is they're really good at storing the data at scale, and they provide a really robust API for you to do what I think is lacking on the I would say maybe legacy tooling or vendor tooling, which is ability for querying the data, okay, and do well basically querying and do aggregations on top of that data. And I'm going to show you that in the demo. I think that's one of the most important part of this, because when I compare this, I compare it to the SOT world. I compare it with Netbox, Nodebot, InfraHub, right? They are great for you to store your intended state, right? And what do they give you? What is one of the biggest appeals? Not the big appeal, but one of the biggest appeals is you can access a data programmatically. You can access it with over REST API or GraphQL in order for you to do your configuration management or pushes. Or so the same thing is what we lacked on the observability space. And these databases provide you with that capability. Right now, we're going to be using Prometheus for this. So we're using the PromQL language. Then there's a visualization layer, alerting, which they can be sometimes, by the way. So this is basically to divide the components. They don't necessarily need to be completely separate. For example,
Mhm.
Grafana is a great tool for the visualization of data.
Mhm.
It provides its own alerting as well. So it has an alerting component embedded on it. You can have your alerting completely different. And right now we have completely isolated with Alert Manager, which is the one that works well with Prometheus. And you see these verticals on the right and left side, right? Um, the You need to look at orchestration and source of truth as one of these pillars that contribute heavily onto the whole uh, health of the observability. The source of truth, in my mind, provides two main, I would say, key roles in the observability stack. The first one, which I would say everybody mm, mm, I think it's the most obvious one, is it provides you with an inventory, right? What am I going to monitor? Okay, I have this device. These are devices that I'm going to be deploying. These devices are in plan, staged. These devices are being decommissioned and maintenance mode. So you have all of that information in your intended state, and you use that information to trigger your observability, monitor, alert, alert, silence. The other aspect is enrichment. Okay, and I think this is one of the biggest ones so far, which in traditional observability. So if you talk with cloud engineering, they usually call this contextual data. So it's actually a way for us to put context into the observability data. A network device doesn't know its role. Okay, like I'm in a big fabric, or let's say I'm a backbone device and I'm a PE router. Usually we put that configuration in the role, maybe in the source of truth, or maybe in the host name. There's a PE there that we know is a provider edge router, and with that we do some enrichment, right? But this would be more explicit. When you actually see the observability data, you see a label that says that this metric comes from this device and this role is a provider edge. Okay, just to give you some example. This is really powerful for circuits to put information like circuits ID and so on. The other part is orchestration. And this orchestration piece is basically, there's a lot of components. We're not talking about a monolithic application. So you need to deploy this. You need to, and this is where tools like Ansible, Kubernetes, Terraform comes into place to help you, drive all this, the implementation of this.
Maintain, upgrade, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The idea would be to use it as an app per se. Okay. So why that's important? Well, because that's kind of like how the lab is set up. We have the network devices, a couple of network devices. We have a couple of telegraph instances that are actually collecting data out of these devices using SNMP and GNMI, a mix of both. We also have some logs, information coming over to Logstash databases. We have Prometheus and Grafana Loki. And for visualization, we'll be using Grafana. For alerts, we use Alert Manager. I don't know if we have time. It will be great, but I don't know if we have time to actually do the full sync over to Keep HQ. It's an alerts incident management system. It's a really good. I've been using them a lot, especially for this kind of demos. And Workflow Orchestrator, okay? And this Workflow Orchestrator, I'm using Prefect, but there's also, you can think about this like Ansible EDA, right? A way for you to detect an event and then tackle on top of that event and run it. And from source of truth, not about basically. And in order for us to orchestrate enriched data and also to have the information on
just one point on top of what David said for everyone to understand. In this book, we have chosen this stack that is totally valid and is open source and we can replicate. However, the way that we explain all the details and how you achieve them is for you to pick the right tool. So you can have your own collector. You can have different collectors. You can have different databases rather than Prometheus or Grafana Loki. That's totally valid. So what we try to do is just come up with a lab that is easy to replicate. But all the ideas on the book are not to make you an expert on these tools, not at all. The idea is to give you the understanding of how to use these tools for your purpose in order to you to build the stack that makes sense.
That's a great point, Christian. Yeah, because there's all types of stacks out there, right? Elasticsearch, Kibana, Logstash, right? There's what you guys are showing. There's all types of stacks. So that's important for folks to know. This is one example, but it's not like the only one. You could combine these tools however you see fit. Great point.
Yeah. And sometimes maybe we are showing how to decompose all the stacks in different tools, but it's still a totally valid choice to get one monolithic application such as Zabbix, Libre, NMS, whatever, that brings all these things together. What is important from us is to understand that even it's one tool, it comes with these different layers. For you to understand, maybe you want to extend part of it, so you don't need to replicate it again. Maybe you can just choose one specific thing and see how it connects to the other. That's the idea. Just break down into the components that then you can figure out how you want to build your stack.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The only thing that I will add to it on the question, especially for these monolithic tools, is that the only problem that I've seen is access to the data itself. Okay, you normally don't. You usually have access only to events that they generate. And I think for automation specifically, we need access to that data, a way for us to actually query it and perform applications.
Exactly.
So it's a key differentiator for sure.
To me, that's the point. What we are trying to explain is what we need to achieve. What are the benefits that you can get it? Then, if you want to assume some of the limitations, like David said, maybe your database in that product have not a full API access to that. It's up to you to decide if this is important or not. We are telling you that if you want to achieve a proper customization and extend the context awareness, you need this. But it's up to you to choose if you want to make it. At least we are giving the information for you to understand all these things together.
And Josh, you wanted to make a point
the
about
other
Telegraph
piece,
too, right? Sorry for interrupting. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple things in there as well, right? One, with the architecture, it's something that's going to be able to be maintained and evolve over time, right? That it's, even though here's your answer in 2025, that answer might be different in 2027, right? And so by having a framework to go from, but have it pluggable is important there. And yeah, there's a couple things as you look at collectors specifically. I think there's some commentary out there. One of the things I do like to look at, Telegraph is, for me, is really nice because it plays well with other sides of not just networking, right? Oftentimes when we start to look at the net DevOps and DevOps type thing, we think of just network in the container, but think about it as your entire enterprise, right? If the enterprise and the compute side, they might be using Telegraph, or find out what they're using to collect data and metrics quickly. The application side as well, what's going on. And by being able to look more than just on the network side, you can say, all right, these guys are doing this might fit well within this particular stack, right? And so I know there's GNMIC out there that is absolutely wonderful for collecting GNMI data. And so if you need to go down that path, take a look at that as a collector, but also be cognizant of what else is going on. So that's a big part for me.
So, okay, let me give a little bit overview. So let's actually look at this. I'm going to go into Grafana. The lab has been running for a while. That's what I was just checking over here. And I'm going to take a look at one of these dashboards, right? So actually, let me explain the setup. This is actually, so the machine, the DigitalOcean, is already up and running. It has this repository set up. Okay, this is the Network Observability Lab. It's cloned. All of that is on the setup of the guide. So you see here all the chapters. In the chapters when you have to do some work and when they have completed that specific task. And we're focusing on the matters included that has everything, right? So I'm using the remote VS Code extension in order for me to connect to the machine. So I can modify files and also do some shell commands in order to connect to the network devices or update a service when I'm running it in order for me to see the changes on the observability stack. Okay, so far what I've just shown you here is this command called netops, which basically is a small CLI tool that handles the life cycle of the lab setup. Okay, so it's entirely management. This helps, populate an Autobot if I need to shut down the lab, bring the new one, bring this chapter into the mix, and then work on that chapter at that. So it helps you set all that up. So right now, usually we go to Grafana. Okay, this Grafana piece has some panels trying to depict the device health. Okay, you can see here, for example, that this is the very top one is a really interesting panel because, well, it's actually getting deprecated, by the way, because it's using Angular, but it's using GraphQL. So it's actually querying the Autobot in order for the devices, in this case, this device COSO2, in order to get the ID, the role, the name, the device type, and so on, and do some transformation on the data in order to show it in a table, right? And if I go here into my Autobot instance, I can see the devices here, and I was checking COSO2, right? So if I go to COSO2 and I did status here, let's say alerted, okay? Let me actually put this into updated. This should change to alerted, right?
There we go.
Green. Okay, why is green? Well, if you look at the mapping that I have over here, this is why there's no alerted. So I can add here, for example, alerted into the mix, and say, oh no, and let me put it here in orange. Okay, let me apply that. So you can play with this, right? The beauty of this is that you're seeing you in one panel, okay? I don't like saying this phrase too much because it hits me back again in production, which is a single pane view, it's a single glass view, whatever. But tries to put that intended state with observability state into the same place. Okay. So let me just.
Yes, this is a nice integration with Notable. Basically, you change the status there, you automatically see displayed in Grafana. And you had it run this for 3 hours, David. So you were able to get a bit of data on this, right? We see.
Yeah, we have a lot of data here. So we have average CPU, memory. I think this is basically using some SNP data. This is actually using some metrics. I'm going to be showing a little bit of the metrics in a bit, but yeah, some CPU average bandwidth in overall, the interfaces state on a device, interfaces details. This is actually one of the panels that I like the most is this one because it brings the two worlds together, intended with observability. So all of this is actually it's a pretty, I would say maybe it's a more complex panel because it's using multiple data sources. So it's getting data from Prometheus, my time series, and also getting data from Nautobot. And then it's doing a lot of transformations into that data in order to create this nice table. But the whole idea here is to basically show you the operational state, if it's enabled or not, and hey, what it should be the active intended state. Is that interface supposed to be active or not? So that's kind of the whole idea. Over here, we can actually see that it's down, but the intended state is active. So that's wrong, and we're gonna work on that to fix it. But in order for you to see that this is not mocked data, okay, it's not like a script that I have that's generating data. Let's actually try to connect into one of these devices. Oh. So I'm going to be generating traffic into, so the one that we're looking right now is Ethernet 1, right? So that's the one that is up. So I'm going to be generating traffic towards this. Let me just do like this, do not fragment bit.
1,000, 10,000.
Let's do it. Let's do 1,000. 10,000. We can do the 10,000 too. It's gonna take a little bit because now this is what is happening. Traffic, of course, is generated, and we should be seeing maybe in a minute the traffic already being picked up from a traffic perspective. While that happens, I can also show you that here we have a BGP section as well. Then the BGP neighbor states. There's a couple of devices that are connected to each other, so they have two BGP peers and some logs, which we are not seeing anything right now, but we should be seeing soon. Okay, now let's pick
There we go.
Okay.
Speak up. And while we wait a bit on that, there was a question here that came through, David, from Pratik. I took a stab at it answering, but he's just wanted to confirm with you. Does the book talk on network observability, which can work across different vendors, right? And it does, so, right? We're talking about just observability, like you said, GNMI, SNMP. These are just regular protocols. It could be a Arista, like you're showing here. It could be Cisco. It could be Juniper. It could be whatever.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and I'll even jump in. It's across technology types as well, right? So we're doing SNMP and GNMI collection, and actually we not just GNMI for all the metrics on one device, but GNMI and SNMP on within the same device, right? And so that I think David started to show there that for the CPU metric, that was something that was going to be gathered via SNMP, and the interface data is being gathered through GNMI.
We can actually see that now,
right?
Here,
I think that, David, what will be actually very interesting now is that you are showing the end state is to show the different components.
Yeah. We're gonna go there for sure, because the goal would be show a little bit of the how metrics works. I'm gonna show as well a little bit of the logs, but we're gonna go full walkthrough of creating a metric. So we're gonna show the entire place. But to actually summarize a little bit here, on that specific question, I can see the CPU used. This is Prometheus, by the way. So Prometheus is in this diagram is this database right here, and it provides a web UI where it's great for doing discovery of your data. So this is actually what I'm doing right now. I just want to verify my metrics, what kind of data labels they have. Okay, and we're using CPU is actually
it's GNMI in there. My mistake on that, my commentary, but it is able to cross between SNMP and GNMI.
To your point, Josh, device uptime, for example, is actually picked up by
SNMP.
Yeah, that never fails. So, for uptime. But yeah, now if we actually take a look on how like this data is actually being sent, right? So we're talking about Telegraph connecting, getting this data. This is usually shown here as files here, right? For example, this is the input on Telegraph that we have right now, connecting and subscribing to these different paths, and doing the sample subscription mode in order to collect that data. Okay, what this is doing is subscribing to the device, getting this data, and then there's some processors happening here on the data normalization piece. The normalization is basically a way for us to make data from SNMP or GNMI or from different vendors, to your question, like across different vendors, work in a way that we actually see the same kind of format, okay, of that data, basically the same kind of schema, okay? If we want to talk it in maybe SOT terms, the idea is to get the same kind of a schema so we can do the same kind of operations no matter the vendor, okay? So in this case, we're renaming some queries, some tags from agent host over to device. We're naming everything on the metrics to a device level. We do the same thing for GNMI. GNMI calls it source. We put it back to device, and what we're seeing, the output, we can see the output either as a Prometheus client, so Prometheus to pick it up, or we can see it here on the CD and on the standard output too. Let me actually show you how that looks like. Yeah.
The configuration on the device itself, David, do you have like streaming telemetry configured over GNMI, right? Basically to send data about uptime, interface metrics to that specific collector, which is your Telegraph in this case, which is collecting the data.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then on Telegraph, you showed you getting that data, you're subscribing to basically that XPath, the GNMI XPath, right, specifically for interface packets in, out, whatever it is. And you're also doing a bit of manipulation to feed that data next into Prometheus.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So right now, the network device, I can connect to it really quick. This is pretty big configuration, but some BPU SPF, some normal configuration. This is the GNMI setup, for example. Okay, and this is set up in a way that can work with Container Lab and connect to an external network in Docker, and for the Telegraph and the Logstash instances and all the collectors, basically be able to talk with the network. And then here on the Telegraph level, we have example this. This is actually the kind of metrics that Telegraph is able to collect and then output, right? This is using something called the influx line protocol, okay? And the way that it is normally seen is that you have a metric measurement, you have some labels, okay? That basically decorate, it gives you describe actually the metric that you're actually getting, and then you have fields. These fields is actually the field that you're actually trying to collect, the use of the CPU state, the memory usage, availability, all that kind of information. And this last thing is stuff.
Another important, I think that this is just a representation of the data. There are different formats. One important question about why we chose Telegraph is because how easy is in Telegraph to add different collection methods. So in the chapter 3 of the book, we present many different data, observability data that is totally valid. And this includes from metrics, logs, protocols like BMP, or you can actually get packet captures. All these things can be interesting for us as a network engineers to take conclusions. Something that is very cool in Telegraph is that aside for the GNMI and the SNMP, that were the ones that David was showing, you could inject any kind of, for example, CLI scraping, because maybe the data that you actually need in some device and vendor only is exposed via CLI. You can put a script, you can add all this information, and you can collect it. For sure, there will be some limitations about performance, all that kind of stuff, but maybe it's a data that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Or a syslog, right? You could ingest syslogs at the same time, all types of data. It's really a data collector, it can be whatever.
Syslog APIs as well, right? Especially as we get into the SD world all together, when we need to get something from an API endpoint.
And actually, so for example, in this case, so we can see the entire life cycle of this data. These metrics are also exposed in the Prometheus client here. So let me actually just try to open that up real quick. Because the part of around the format of the metrics, it depends on what kind of technology you're using, right? So this is actually what Prometheus is actually collecting. This is the Prometheus metrics, which is what people have seen the most in this case. And from here it goes to Prometheus. We can see it, and then we can query it. Now, coming back to the lab, right? So the thing that I was telling is basically like the robustness of the API is because we can do stuff like this, right? So if I say operator status, right, and if I query just operator status, this is basically all the operational status of my interfaces that I have in my network. So this is actually, you have seen here COSO1, COSO2, all their interfaces, and one which is basically that is up and two that is down. Okay, I can do a simple filter like this, right? And a conditional like this, and it will filter the metrics, telling me which ones are the ones that are actually operational. Okay, and I can do something like count this, right? And it will do the count for me. Maybe this is not, something that fancy to see, but what this can give us is that we start creating, we start looking this aspect of aggregating data and looking at it in a different manner is what actually powers all of these dashboards at the end of the day, right? Another good one would be maybe, for example, we want to see
if you maybe add some question with the contextual data.
Let me actually. So, for example, interface role. So let me actually do one with contextual data. Interface role is part of that contextual data. So I have interface in Octets, right? So this is usually a counter. Normally, for us to calculate it, we do functions like rate over a small period of time. And in this case, this is bytes. So I'm transforming into bits because we're network engineers. And here we are, right? We have, would be the equivalent to bits per second, right? Now, to the point of why contextual data, the factor of contextual data is that now that we have contextual data, we can actually use it in our queries to do something like this. Like, I can say that give me basically a sum okay, of the traffic based on the interface role. Let me see if I have here interface role, right? And I'm missing a by, sorry. By interface role, right? Okay. And this is gonna give me the sum of the traffic on a per interface role on all the devices. And if I say, for example, site here is gonna be able to filter on that specific site. Okay.
Mhm.
Missing. Yeah, sorry. Come on. Here. There you go. Okay. So for lab site 01, the sum of all the interfaces that are looking at a peer is basically this. It's only one. So it's basically the same value right now. But if we have a bigger network, we can see that this could be the spine layer, right? So this could be the spine facing layers or the downstream T0, T1s, or what upstream T1, T. So you definitely can do this kind of different operations with knowing now that declaration, like what is the role of the interface, what is the role of the device, and perform this kind of calculations. Okay.
So you can get after that, David, this query and have a dashboard in Grafana for exactly this query, right?
Exactly.
If you want. Okay, so
Actually,
you could build. Yeah.
you can build on top of it. Yeah. And Grafana actually has a pretty cool application called Explore that actually lets you build that. Let me go back to Prometheus here. So if I just do this, I run the query. Here we go.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, and I'm even going to go further. This is also then how you get into the alerting side, right? So these queries are okay down the path for the graphing, but the same type of queries. Hey, you need to have, let's say at a site you need to have 3 peers always available type thing, or 2 peers, and hey, if it drops below that down to 1 or 0, okay, let's the interface status of those, and so it's a very rich, powerful query language. And by having these labels that we're talking about with the site and all the other pieces, you can start to put some of that human thought into the actual metric side and observability. So
Yeah, exactly. And actually, the other, so a lot of these queries, for example, this one, down, this is a good one. This actually count the interfaces of our status for this device that are equal to 2, which is basically the down state. So it's really powerful what you can do with the queries. As long as you have the data and it's normalized, is great. It's kind of like the same with the SOT, right? As long as you have your data clean, you trust your data that is in your SOT, then great. Everything is smooth. Okay, now the other thing that I wanted to show was actually the logs aspect of things. But I want to do something a little bit different with the logs. The logs path, okay, is a little bit different, okay? It goes through a collector called Logstash. I'm using Logstash, and actually the version inside the book is using Logstash and connects to Grafana Loki. Now, I do have to do a disclaimer that the plugin that actually connects Logstash over to Loki is not being maintained anymore, right? So right now the lab is going to work perfect because everything is pinned on the version that it worked. There are definitely, this is the part where you can swap and replace and see what matters, what's going to help you. We've been doing testing actually with Vector, okay, from Datadog, and has basically the same kind of capability that we will have with Logstash, and provides that connection over to Loki. If your backend is going to be Loki, for example, okay. But if it's Elastic Stack, definitely Logstash would be the. And actually, that's one of the main reasons why I didn't use Telegraph for logs, because I wanted to show, that at this layer is really whatever works best for you, okay, and for your backend. That's really it. I honestly wanted to give a chapter as well on the NMIC only because I think it's a great tool. So definitely, this layer is open for multiple types of collectors. But yeah, so the Logstash piece, I want to highlight it because the way that it's actually set up is that it's listening to all the logs, okay, that are coming from the network devices. This is the syslog. Forget the Gelf right now. Anything on Gelf, this is for the Docker services. But the syslog, we're receiving anything from syslog, but we're parsing the data. Okay. Now, logs are really, really powerful, and I think that a lot of the vendors actually, so far over the years, the way that you have to be been parsing syslog has been really bad, but the content inside the syslog message is really good. It's a structure. I will say that because I compare it with applications and other systems that are already out there and they're already using standards like maybe logFMT or in a way for them to parse the data, so, which is really nice. But I still think that from a networking perspective, I mean, the well-known vendors have really pretty good messages. So right now, what this is doing, okay, is actually doing some transformation, the same as Telegraph, making data look kind of the similar way. Then we're doing some grok, which is basically regex parsing, trying to get data and creating fields inside the messages, creating a data structure. Now it's not just a simple text message. No, it's a JSON. It's kind of like a JSON blob with a message field and with some extra metadata. Okay. And we're also in this particular section, we're taking a look at deeper at the message, verifying that, hey, the vendor facilities line proto, the vendor facility process up down. So we know it's an interface state change. Okay, then I'm going to create a field called event type interface status, and I'm going to parse even further the message in order for me to collect what is the interface that actually was affected and the status of that change. Why is that important? Let me show you why. So let me actually connect to SO2. And if I take a look, what was the interface that was there? Again.
2, I think.
2, right?
Internet 2?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah.
So let me actually go here. Let me generate a couple of events. Let me say no shot. Let me show it again. And let me not show it again.
So that should have generated a couple of log messages.
Yeah, that should have generated a couple of log messages. Let's take a look. So in the same Explore tab, actually, we can see if we have received logs. So I go to log here, right? And okay, so this is a good example. One of the great features of Grafana is that a lot of their data sources, you can connect it to multiple data sources, but a lot of the data sources, unless the well-known, provide this query builder. Okay, so this one, I'm just on Prometheus, I just put the query in, but for Loki, you can create, you can set the option to builder. So you basically can kind of like auto-discover, and it helps you based on that language. So in this case, I'm going to say that the device, I did that on CSO2, right? So the device CSO2, and you can see here what would be the resulting query, okay? So if I run it, here is the data, okay? Let me actually take on the last 15 minutes. Yeah, well, it's pretty thin right now, but these are all the events of the interfaces that happened. And not only the interfaces, LDP neighbor, information, configuration protocol, and all that, right? But let's take a look at the LDP one. So let me actually do zoom. It's better to do zoom here, right? Because it seems like
yep.
Okay.
That's better.
So here is the message, okay? This is the log message, and all of this is the metadata that I was talking about. Now, this metadata, as you can see, device, facility label, all of this comes from the log message that we managed to parse with the grok parsing, and is being decorated. I have the Panda be the packet here. It's a label that I add just to make sure that, hey, it's being correctly parsed. And yeah, and there's other facility vendors. We don't see anything around event type or interface status, right? It's because this is an LDP event. But if I look at the horizontal line protocol, these are
LAN
two.
protocol right there. Yeah.
If I look at this one, there you go. Event type, interface status. The interface is Ethernet 2, and the interface status is up. Now, moreover, I can actually filter on this. So if I click the plus, there is adding that field as a filter, and now it's showing me everything on that event type equal to interface status. So these are all the three interface status changes that I just ran. Okay. Now this is great, but the power of this actually in Grafana at least is that you can create something called annotations, right? An annotation is basically a vertical line. Actually, I can add a notation here. Let me actually add a notation, and I say, hello, Cisco DevNet, right? And I can add even a tag. Let me say that bad. Boom. So the annotation is added, right? And another person that is actually looking at this specific graph is going to be able to see that annotation. But I can create annotations here from data sources. In this case, I'm going to create it from the logs. So I'm going to call it interface up. Let's maybe run it on low key. Yeah, for sure. Let's put a color. Which color do you guys like? Let's purple, maybe. I'm going to call it and put it in selected panels, not all of them. Let me actually say maybe the CPU memory one, interface state. Yeah, these two. These two should be more than enough. And here you specify the log query that you want. So in this case, I'm going to do device. Instead of specifying statically what device is going to be, I'm going to tell Grafana, hey, tell me which device I'm seeing, and based on the device that I have on my dashboard, that's the one that's going to be filtering on. And now I'm going to do event type interface status, and I can even do event type. Let's do event type interface status only. So we are only this is interface up, so it should be interface status equal to up. So this is what it should be because it's interface up annotation. Okay. So if I do this, interface up is up, and we have them here. Let's actually see them here.
Mm-hmm.
Interface up, interface up. There you go. And here is showing you all the labels that are coming with that log event. Okay. Now, this is interfaces, but for audits, I actually turn this off because I already have one for audits. And let me actually turn this down. And I can see here this one for audits is actually when I enter in VTY mode into the network device. And this is great for, doing, oh yeah, actually this, everything happened when I made this change in the network device. So,
somebody connected basically, yeah, to the device.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I don't think we have enough time to show you the rest of the metric. One thing, maybe we can leave it for the next session, is actually now doing a problem statement. The whole goal would be maybe to, in this case, we have a need, we have a router, we have some strict configuration policies that this is, in terms of the lab, we're going to have more than 2 static routes. And our goal is to be able to collect information around how many static routes are configuring that device, and then basically alert on them, okay? And it gives you some different steps that we can go through. The goal would be to create maybe a Python script to actually collect the data, parse the data, generate a metric out of it, and then based on that metric, see it, verify, yeah, this looks good. I'm going to add a new route, delete routes, okay? This is a little bit more down here. Add routes, visualize route changes, then create alert rules. So we can actually see alerts being generated from it.
I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job documenting all of this. I mean, the book also. So, folks, you've seen David, right, kind of walk through batteries included example. You can go and, like he showed, right, just clone the repo, Docker Compose up, bring up all the environment with all the tools. They're already in there for you. Telegraph, Grafana, Loki, Prometheus, right? They're all like we've seen, like David was showing.
Yeah,
You can run
100%.
it, whatever, cloud, locally on a VM. Could you run this on like a regular Mac,
No.
David?
So
No.
because it's a lot of components,
Uh-huh.
Container Lab as well, issues with the Mac back in the day as well. Honestly, I haven't even tried it lately. So I know I have the a dev container running for this, which was working, but then happens with labs, stop working, and I haven't got the time to actually get it to fix. So the one that I know works with the dependencies and all that because it's a reproducible environment is the DigitalOcean one. But this could be whatever. Basically, if you have a Debian based machine, right, that has uh, enough resources, I would say right now for this lab, 4 CPU, 16 gig of RAM is one
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So
I mean,
and
I'm,
yeah, and it's only for setting it up and turning it down. The But yeah, that would be it. And a lot of the setup, my recommendation would be to take a look at the setup guide because it goes
mhm.
step by step. In case you're missing some credentials or where do I put my container lab image so NetApp's actually spinning everything up. Yeah, all of that is already like prepackaged. So
All right, folks. So yeah, make sure you check out the repo, clone it, and we'll bring Christian, David, and Josh. Like I said, they'll come back, and you have a chance. You run this, you attend to problems. You have the chance of asking them questions live. So no pressure, guys. But yes, any final words before we wrap up this one? Christian, David, Josh.
yeah, I mean,
No, we are good for the next one.
All right, perfect.
I'd say to get exploring, right? I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of this has been through exploring on our own, and hopefully it's been able to take our lessons learned of what we've learned over the years and simplify it and take it there.
Yeah, fantastic work. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thanks, folks, for watching this episode. Looking forward, we'll get all of us together and we'll see availabilities and whatnot, but we'll put on the calendar. We'll be back, episode 2 of this. And Dave, you want to give a quick preview of what we're going to cover in episode 2? I know we were like programmability, getting data over API. Like, is that?
yes, yeah, exactly. So our goal would be to finalize the entire view. So maybe we can do the final example that we could cover today, but because that's actually a preamble of getting programmability into it. So the next step would be basically how can we access the data programmatically? We're going to be creating kind of like a small a CLI application to see the data, and that's going to be showing us in a table format. Okay, and metrics and logs and kind of like a CLI tool for the network engineer when they're doing operations on the devices.
Network people love their CLIs. I know, right? It's especially older folks like us.
I love it too. I love it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for watching. Guys, thank you so much for being here, presenting. Fantastic work. Looking forward to the next one. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care, folks.
Thank you.
See
Bye.
you.